Hi, I'm Stewart Spinks and welcome to episode 383 of my podcast, Beekeeping Short and Sweet. I talked about Nosema last week and it got me thinking about the things that I do to give my honeybees the very best opportunity at the start of the season to produce a lovely crop of honey in the summer. Let's kick off with a more detailed look at the spring clean. Beekeeping Short and Sweet, a beekeeping podcast for the inquisitive beekeeper with a short attention span. A beekeeper, in fact, just like me. Hi everyone, I'm back in the new office again, and what a joy it is to be able to grab a coffee, walk 10 paces and sit down in my nice new warm workspace. Even when it's been pouring down with rain, I've still managed to smile as the warmth of that new space hits me. It's quite alarming how quickly the weeks are passing right now. I'm sure it's all down to the fact that I'm so very busy with everything. I've just published my latest video showing how empty the old unit is now looking. I've had to take down the honey room stud wall, and that created quite a lot of work and mess. Thankfully, it all came apart reasonably well, and it gave me a chance to use my new reciprocating saw, and that made life a whole lot easier. The timber will come in handy for making new hive stands, or maybe we'll repair and extend the shelter at the paddock. There really is quite a lot of timber available. Thankfully, the landlords have asked for the office to be left in place. Again, it's well made, with power and lighting, so it actually benefits them for the next occupant. I wouldn't have wanted to remove it, to be honest, and it would have given me a bit of a headache in disposing of all of the waste material. Luckily, the plasterboard from the honey room simply unscrewed, and my eldest daughter and her husband are building a large extension to their home, so they were grateful to take the sheets of plasterboard to reuse. I didn't get paid for it, mind you. They are quite astute like that. For me, it saved an expensive trip to the recycling centre, as plasterboard is very pricey to get rid of. We all benefit in the end, so I'm happy for that. And maybe it helps the environment a little too. We all have to do our little bit, and maybe it will add up to a big help for our planet. With just a couple of weeks left before we're due to vacate the rented unit, I'm feeling reasonably in control of the process. Thank goodness we're not yet into the active beekeeping season. I'm not sure I would be able to sleep at all with so much still to do. Talking of the beekeeping season, the Bees on a Budget series of videos will be starting up again very soon, with frame making and inserting foundation being probably the first video. Then perhaps a look at the tools and clothing that's needed for a beginner beekeeper who's maybe on a tight budget. It was great to make up the hives when we did. Having those completed well in advance takes the pressure off a busy calendar right now. Making up frames and adding foundation, while a pretty straightforward process, does need a little planning and thought. For most hobbyist beekeepers, there is plenty of time in early spring to settle down for an afternoon session of frame making, followed by adding the sheets of foundation. If you've purchased a kit like the Thorn Beehive's Bees on a Budget outfit, which our video series is named after, it will come with all the frames and foundation that you'll need to get started. And that makes life so simple right at the start, when the beginner beekeeper is trying to grasp all of the new terms and names for all of those different bits of equipment that you'll end up getting your hands on. And for the more experienced beekeepers, just think back to when you first started and just trying to get your head round all of those different names. If you decide to buy all of the equipment in separate lots, just be sure to get the right frames and foundation for your hive. Again, if you phone your preferred supplier, they're sure to ask you all of the right questions about what you'll need, but if not, just mention that the hive you've bought is a standard national or a 14 by 12, or Langstroth, or whatever it is you've decided upon. If you're off to the spring shows here in the UK and you haven't made up your mind yet, personally, I would recommend a Langstroth beehive. For me, it provides just the right size boxes for the colony to build a strong brood nest area and still have plenty of food stored close at hand. And of course, I have plenty of Langstroth nukes for sale this spring, so do get in touch if you're still looking for bees. Just thinking back to making up frames and adding foundation, you will hear beekeepers talking about adding foundation at the very last minute to keep it as fresh as possible for the bees. And that might sound somewhat, nerdy, but it is with good reason. Honestly, not essential. As soon as the beeswax foundation is made, it will start to lose some of its natural oils and aromas. It's easy to tell. Simply open up a sealed pack on a warm day and you should be hit with that wonderful smell of fresh wax. If it's really old, the smell will not be as strong. Now the bees will jump onto fresh wax quickly and build new comb as fast as they can, whereas with older foundation it can sometimes take a while, or maybe takes an emergency in the hive for the bees to use it. They're running out of space, that kind of thing. And this is the reason we keep our precious foundation tightly wrapped up in their bags, additionally wrapped in maybe newspaper, and then kept in a solid cardboard box until needed. All of that said, I've had to add a super of very old frames and foundation onto colonies in the summer, and even though the foundation has lost its colour, probably been hanging around for several years and had no smell, the bees urgently needed it, and so got onto it really quickly and produced comb without any problem. So, as with most things in beekeeping, although it's prudent to take care of your wax foundation and use it just before the bees need it, there is always a situation that will mean they'll use whatever you give them, whenever you give it to them, and in whatever condition. That's just beekeeping. There aren't many black and white areas in beekeeping. There's always lots of grey. The bees will simply do something different to keep us guessing each time. Just finally, on the old wax foundation scenario, if it is really old and you want to encourage your bees onto it, try wafting a hot air gun over the wax once you've installed it into the frame. You could also use a hairdryer. What this does is softens the wax, releasing what remaining essential oils that might be lingering in the wax, and that in turn encourages the workers onto it more willingly. Do this just before taking the super or brood box of frames to your hive, and the bees will be oh so excited to work the wax foundation for you. I like to add a few new frames in the spring to each hive. For me, with a target of 50 production colonies, that can be as many as 100 or 200 frames, depending on what I find in the hives through first inspections. This is all part of my Healthy Hives management plan and really helps our colonies to maximise every frame we give them in the brood box. Spring is an important time for the growth of our colonies as they race towards a reproductive phase in most cases. That, of course, is swarming to most beekeepers and a time of stress for those beekeepers who haven't got a plan in place to deal with it. Colonies coming out of winter are much reduced in size right now. It's probably one of the trickiest times of the year for them. Older winter bees will be reaching the end of their lives, and brood nest areas will be growing to provide more workers for that spring growth phase of the season. It's a combination of reducing adult bees and increasing brood that can cause a sudden loss in vigour or the sudden demise of a colony's brood area, sometimes seen as chilled brood, where an insufficient number of adult workers can't maintain the correct temperature across all of the brood nest. Added to this, if the colony is quite small and the loss of overwintered adult bees isn't replaced quickly, the collapse of that colony can result. I call it hypothermic shock. At one point, you're seeing a reasonably sized colony heading through February, and then suddenly they're all dead. It's a really sad day when that happens, and not much that you can do at that late stage as a beekeeper to get them through those final couple of weeks until the weather breaks and the warm spring sunshine intervenes to help them along. Hopefully that's not going to happen this spring, and we'll all have colonies to fuss over in early March. Not long to go for that now. Once I get into the first inspections of the new season, I'm looking at frames and the condition they're in. Thankfully, we started a routine of frame replacement many years ago, and so the vast majority of our frames in hives are only a couple of seasons in use. As they get more and more use, so they become less effective at holding brood, and the size of the brood nest can become restricted, leading, yes, of course, to another trigger for swarming. The trick here is to look at the frames and assess which are in need of replacing, and target maybe 2 to 4 frames to replace in the coming weeks. Don't just jump in and pull 4 frames and swap with foundation. It could have very damaging consequences. If you have a 10-frame brood box full of frames, for example, 4 of which are a bit gnarly and old, you've decided you want to replace them and pull them all at the beginning of the season, you may be very disappointed with the results. It's still cold, you don't have a huge population of adult bees as yet, and they're generally busy looking after brood. With it being cold, they're not best placed to produce wax. Forage might be in short supply, and so instead of drawing out nice new comb, they chew away at the foundation at the bottom corners and use this wax to build what comb they can a little closer to the brood nest. If it turns dramatically colder, as it can in spring, you might find they're not able to get out and forage and end up starving because you've inadvertently removed frames which, although a little bit grotty, have their last remaining food stores in them. Just be careful about the timing. It's better to wait until later in the spring to swap out these frames. It's just safer. Warmer spring weather is more conducive to wax production, and more wax means drawn comb faster. For beginner beekeepers particularly, it's worth sitting on your hands and waiting an extra couple of weeks than diving in and potentially doing more damage at a very critical time in the season. At that point, when the sun starts to throw a little more heat at us, I would recommend a spring clean. It is a simple enough process, but does require the beekeeper to have an almost complete replacement hive. And I know for some, this may be a cost too far, but let me explain why I think it's money well spent. After a full season of working hard, our honeybees will have prepared their beehive for winter, sealing all the gaps with propolis, utilising any spare room with a little bit of comb, or maybe a lot of comb if the beekeeper has forgotten to fill the box with its maximum number of frames. Been there, done that. Frame runners will have been propolised, the top bars of frames will have comb built on them, and it all becomes something of a challenge to carry out those early inspections without making the bees grumpy with frames being stuck to sidewalls, solid propolis cementing everything together, and let's not forget all of that debris that's fallen down onto the floor. A ready-made hideaway for pests and diseases, if nothing else. The warmer spring weather brings with it an opportunity for us to get back into the hives and start our inspection routines, whatever they may be. Yet it's not always easy because of what I've just described. So one of the first things I'll do in the spring is target the very worst hives and plan to swap out the floor, brood box and crime board or cover board, whatever type is being used. This has the effect of basically putting the colony into a nice clean space that, for us, is so much easier to inspect and manipulate. For the bees, it can be a little detrimental in as much as we're disturbing their well-prepared, wind-proofed and weather-proofed home. And that's why I perform this task in the spring. Colonies are growing quicker, the weather is generally warming up, and any brief disturbances soon settle down and everything gets back to normal. The effect of this for the beekeeper is, I think, quite valuable. We're removing potentially harmful pests and diseases from our colony, which has to be a good thing. We're giving our bees a clean hive to build up in for spring and summer honey production, and it makes our early inspections so very much easier because the frames are not stuck to the runners or sidewalls, and when we move the frames around they do so without jarring or bumping the bees, keeping everyone calm and settled. What's not to like with all of that? Yes, we may be changing the dynamics within the brood box in terms of airflow, a few small gaps maybe, but I think the benefits far outweigh any potential negative consequences. Another trick you can use is to smear a little petroleum jelly on the brood box runners to help them slide more freely. The bees soon clean up the runners, but a little of that jelly is transferred onto the underside of the frames and it will help them slide a little more freely for some time to come. It helps with that inspection routine. The old hive parts can be removed to the shed for cleaning and stored away for the next time they're needed, maybe a spring artificial swarm. If you have several hives, you could simply carry out this process on a 1 hive per week scenario until all of the hives are swapped out, leaving the final spare hive ready for reuse as the season progresses. And that's it, a simple technique that helps take the sting out of those early season inspections. Give it a try. You might find it gives you and your bees a really strong start to the new season. Well, that's it for this week. For all of you who haven't yet signed up to my Patreon page, I, together with Steph, have been creating beekeeping content for many years now. And if you're looking for some straightforward, down-to-earth tips and techniques, help and advice, then do take a look at my Patreon page. We have over 1,700 individual beekeeping posts, videos and podcasts filled with useful and timely help and advice. My approach is pragmatic and calm, sometimes entertaining, but always with help and support for the beekeepers at the heart of what I do. I keep my videos short and concise wherever possible, no waffle, no flannel, just honest beekeeping advice from years of keeping bees. Take a look and join me for the new 2026 beekeeping season. It'll cost you less than a jar of honey, and you never know, there may be something there that will help improve your beekeeping. Check us out online at www.patreon.com/Norfolk Honey.